We're going to do what I think is one of the most important pieces of this for a few minutes. We're going to take a few minutes for this. At your table, you'll see this shaded piece, kind of shaded in the middle. It says reflection is not and reflection is. And as I said before, the very first time I did some of this was at an ECSL meeting at PS1, which is, do you know how many years ago it was?
Late 80s.
Really?
Or no, wait, no, late 90s.
Late 90s. Gosh, we're not that.
I
Late,
was there.
I know. Jenny was there. Ann was there. Donna. Anyone else? So 3. So
It
this
was
was,
awesome.
this was the first time I did this piece. It's again become so helpful. At your table, I want you to spend 3 minutes talking to each other and think, because this is what I think we miss with a lot of things, and you can use this model when we look at reflections of what it's not and what it is. When you do, you always start with what it is not and then move to what it is. So what I want you to do at your tables is clarify reflection is not this and reflection is this. Discuss amongst yourselves at your table. You have about 3 or 4 minutes. What is it not and what is it? Go for it.
Let that information sit in the kernel environment.
All right, let me just ask you this even before I collect the ideas.
That's certainly that.
What was the value in doing this, just this part, at the table, talking about what it is not and what it is? What was the value of doing that for you, just that part? What was the value? Because my guess is a lot of you haven't had that conversation at your schools, am I right? What was the value?
Understanding the meaning of why we're reflecting, why, why are we doing it, and what is it, or what does it mean?
What is it? Because I guarantee you, if you have 5 faculty members even from the same school, are they all thinking it's the same thing? I don't know. That's just good to find out. Maybe they do, but it's good to clarify. Someone else had their hand up. Yes?
It helps define.
Helps define. And you'll notice I will not give a definition of reflection more than the experience of it. I don't give a definition, except sometimes I show a Chinese character for what it means, but I couldn't find that slide. Anybody else, what it was like to do this process? Yeah.
It was hard to stick with just one and not the other.
You did both, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you were talking about one thing, but it is, but then it isn't.
Right.
Like kind of the back and forth.
So what I suggest, yes, please.
I was going to say, I think something we observed is that it allowed us to observe contradictions and complexities.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't think we could as a group write a definition of reflection right now.
Right.
We could say a lot of the tensions that exist within.
I'm so glad you said it, because this is one of the things I love about this, is there's all these contradictions. It's not that simple to say it's this or that. It's so contextual in so many ways, or maybe there's just so many variabilities that I've not been able to say definitively. So I want to explain that is, some of you may go back and lead something like this in your school or with students, which is great. I love leading this with students. They're so profound in what they say. But you will hear contradictions. So what I do when I lead this is when I get to this part, I'm going to ask you what it is not, and then what it is, and we're going to write it down, but we're not going to comment. First, we're going to just look at the list, and then we're going to comment. Everybody good with that? Mm-hmm. All right. So let's just yell it out. What is it not? It is not just
Evaluation.
evaluation. What is it not?
Forced conversation.
What was that?
Forced conversation.
Just
Forced.
trying to write the pen. Forced conversation.
Right or wrong?
Someone else said something over here. What was that?
Limited, not limited.
Not limited. Not right or wrong.
Based on extrinsic motivation.
Based on extrinsic motivation.
Judging without guilt.
Judging without growth.
It's not easy.
Not easy. Anything else that is not? Finite. Whining. Finite whining. I don't know. What else is it not?
It's not linear.
Not linear. What else is it not?
Rushed.
Rushed. What else is it not? Regurgitation. I'm just not gonna write the whole thing out. What else is it not? Anything else that must be said?
Forced.
Not the end. What else?
Forced.
Not forced.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay, because it's good when people repeat it.
What do you
Shows-
think your teacher wants?
It's not what your teacher wants you to say, right?
Not constrained by a single subject.
I'm sorry, would you repeat that?
Not constrained by a single subject.
Not constrained by a single subject.
It's not always going to get an aha moment.
Not just for students.
It's not perfect.
Anything else? All right, you ready to go to the other side? Just like Adele. It is, I'm doing different colors so it stands out a little bit, I hope you can see. What is it? What is it? Reflection is
Personal.
personal. What else is it?
Organic.
What was that?
Organic?
Organic, gosh, we're definitely from California. What else is it?
Authentic.
Authentic. Anything else it is? Open-ended? Intrinsic? What else is it?
Reconstructing experience.
Reconstructing experience.
Ongoing.
Endless. Oh, I got endless and ongoing at the same time. Is that lovely? Endless and ongoing. I think I have to say and just because I like that resonance. Anything else it is?
Evolving.
Evolving. If you see words you like, jot them on your paper. That's your take home unless you take a photo of this because this won't be up here forever. What else is it?
Emotional and analytical.
Emotional and analytical. You must have read my article. I'm just joking. What else is it? Anything else it is?
Empowered.
Empowering. Anything else it is?
Catalyst.
That is another favorite word. Catalyst. What else is it?
It's free.
That's the funnest thing anyone has ever said. It's free. Oh my gosh, no one's ever said that. Reflection is free. Oh my gosh, in a world with everything that has a price tag. You said that.
It's free in many ways. I mean, it's free,
Yeah.
no one's reading your
Yeah.
mind, and you can just
free.
do whatever.
I love that.
Yeah.
Anything else it is? I'm going to add one more word just because I love the idea of contradiction, right? It's easy.
Oh. How about collaborative? That's
It's
one that's fun.
collaborative too.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, here's the good news, bad news. Okay. Good news, it's a great list. Bad news is not a lot to critique. I like when I can critique more because then I can point out things, but you're too good, except I have a few I can critique. It's very important you critique. A few things will come up. So if you leave this, a couple things will evolve, and you hope they do so you can talk about them. If you don't, you have to somehow get them up there. So, you really hit, you hit all the points I agree with. It's not evaluation. This becomes something that people want to discuss sometimes because they want to evaluate it, because they want to measure it, they want to put it on a rubric, right? Okay, you can't evaluate reflection, but if you had the kids reflect using a haiku, you could see whether you could measure maybe did they do the patterning, but you don't measure the message. Everybody get that? But it's better just not to evaluate it because the minute you evaluate it, what do you then reinforce for students? Right and wrong, and it definitely becomes what your teacher wants you to say. So the minute you evaluate, you take away authenticity and honesty. Oh, that was an important word, is honest. Like authentic, honest, important word. I love that he says it's not limited, it's not forced conversation, however we force it. We do forced conversations, so we need to think about how to make the most unforced forced conversations. You know what I mean? How to make them less forced. You know, how do you kind of make it more an invitation rather than forced? It's an invitation to participate rather than you must say something. How do we create that environment? So maybe allowing people to talk more to one other person than always having to speak out loud. All those ways, but just sometimes just vary it so it becomes more personal. All these, it's not limited, it's not right or wrong based on extrinsic motivation. You did great work. Judging without growth, easy, finite, whining. Okay, let's talk about whining for a minute. Could reflection include whining? Yeah, I have to leave a whining clause open because it goes really well with judging without growth. You want whining to lead to somewhere. You don't want it to just be the end point. Whining it's not a whining session. However, the whining may need to get out of the person so they can get it out, so they can do what? So they can just get it out of them so they can figure out what's really going on. I mean, my daughter, I remember one of the most important reflections she wrote was first she said, if you turn the page in your handout, you'll see a 4-square reflection tool. 4-square reflection tool is one I use a lot, and it started in my daughter's 8th grade class. She had a history teacher at Santa Monica Lincoln Middle School, and he had a reflection piece that just was the top part. What happened and how did you feel? Because he knew reflection is both emotional and analytical. You have to say what happened and then how did you feel. They have to go together. That's the basics of reflection. And then it was through a workshop that some teachers said, well, if you say what happened and how do you feel, you might also want to say your ideas and questions. So this is how this birthed. I shouldn't take any credit because it was all teachers developed this page, but it's true. My daughter had an experience, and when she said what happened, which is necessary, you have to say what happened. A lot of people say you do not regurgitate, but you must say what happened. Otherwise, they don't have the context in which it occurred. So it's often people say summarizing. It's not summarizing, but it is. You have to summarize. You have to put it in context. And somebody even said that somewhere. It's somebody made a statement like that. It's the recounting of the experience. You have to say what happened. Here's an example. If we all went to a convalescent home to interact with elder people, well, we've had the same experience. No, each would have a different one, so I have to ask what happened so I know what happened to you. And upon that, I know that you're going to then reflect once I hear what happened. And my daughter, using this page, wrote what happened, and it sounded very nice and everything was friendly, but when she got to this side, whoa, it was a tirade of upset. Somebody had not let her do what she planned, which had been prearranged. And she was in 8th grade, so can you imagine the tirade? So if she just said what happened, and hadn't been allowed, so she needed both sides of it. So we do need to summarize. If they just regurgitate or just summarize, then it's a summary or regurgitation. That's not reflection. It needs both sides. So I really like that someone said you reconstruct the experience, and then from that you get the emotional analytical context of it. And that's the foundation of reflection. Everybody get that? And you don't have to agree with everything I say, or anything. But this is how I've evolved with my thinking on this. So I love all that you said, so it's very little to say in terms of correcting it. Was there anything up here that anybody else wanted to ask about or question? How could someone have a comment? Yes, please.
You know, I just wanted to speak to the fact that reflection is good, but I feel like a large component is all about timing. When you reflect, depending on their age, the experience, what you did. We were talking about reflecting on our own personal experiences, if it was something with, a relation you had in the past. Something that takes longer to look back and reflect because those reflections can change. For example, if you take kids who did a service learning project and there were, a social issue, which never happens at that age or anything like that, to try to get them to reflect even maybe a couple of days out, they're still thinking about that. But if you go out a little bit further without going too far, that's going to kind of be removed from that, and they're going to be talking about the experiences of that. But it's like you have to decide at each, depending on the project, the age of the kids, like the timing of when you do the reflection, I think is a huge piece.
I agree with you. So there's a couple things I want to mention. So we're going to get to the timing because I think that's really good. And somebody put something related to timing, that it can't be rushed. Now, it doesn't mean it can't be quick.
No.
I know I'm not saying anything. So the timing is important. You don't want to rush it, but it could still be in a minute. You can have a meaningful reflection in a minute, and you can also sustain it over time with the same experience. But one thing I need to pause on for a moment is I do need to say this, is for me, because I've heard this a few times, and people here who've come a lot have heard, that for me, service learning is not a project, it's a what? Process. If you call it a project, then people think it's a project and it's done. And it's a problem when people describe it. Because very often a project can be an add-on, it doesn't have to be curricular. And if I ask you to describe a service learning project, you'll say, well, we took kids to the convalescent home. If I ask you to decide the process, what will you say to me?
Teaching about the elderly.
You might say what the goals of it were.
But you might say, we started, we had some, we read a book, we had a speaker, we researched about the aging process. So it's important when we think about service learning connected to academics, we talk about it as a process. In Asia, it's a process. I just got off the plane, so I have to. So it's very important that we think of it that way, in my opinion. Because if we talk about it as a project, we're always talking more often about the service than the work, and I think we need to integrate it more. So I just needed to point that out. So we're talking about it as a process, and with the process, it happens repeatedly, with many opportunities. And one of the things we're going to do in a little bit is we're going to look at some of this question that you've raised so eloquently, is how do you add reflection when you're doing investigation? How do you bring it out at the different stages, so it's not just the summative reflection at the end? And we'll talk about the timing element too, so I'm very glad you
Are
raised
they
it.
not reflecting on the process and their experiences?
Absolutely.
Whether those experiences be stuff that was academic-based within that service, or the emotional, social components of stuff that they carry with them as lifelong lessons. So there's both. I don't mean to say project is not process.
No, I understand.
Obviously, you want it interwoven, but you're going to be, you do some things you do, even if they're completely woven in, do have might have kind of a start and kind of an end in
Yeah,
certain things.
absolutely.
So I'm talking about it in
Right, that
that
context.
way, yeah.
And these ideas for reflection don't always fit with service learning. They can fit with any kind of teaching, right? So it's in any context we can use some of these things. All right, so, hold on, I have to go back to where I was. Helps me stay there. Okay. So, I'm going to jump to this, a different box here about when reflection matters, because that's also what you're talking about. It's when we think of, one of the things we have to look at is when, and I think you brought that up, when do we want to have kids reflect? Am I right? Now, what I love that you just said just now is that sometimes when a student's reflecting, let's say we went to a convalescent home, or we went several times, but the student, what really mattered, the significant moment for the student was that she found out that this guy she always didn't like wasn't a jerk. He was actually a helpful kid. Can she reflect on that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the reflection may surprise us that it's not related to what we think they're going to reflect on, but it's related to what's going on in them, because we can't get inside those heads. Maybe that's a good thing, right? So what we want to do is make sure the reflection is open enough so that it can draw them into whatever is significant to them. And this is important to me. Is when does reflection matter? Because we often want to orchestrate it to be at a certain point or a certain moment. So I often say to students, be on the lookout for a significant moment that calls you to reflection. So think about that for a moment. This is good. Some of you take kids away for a trip. How many of you take kids on trips or things like that? Okay, so very often on these trips, students are told every day you're going to come back and write in your journal. Am I right? If you were a teenager, how many days of writing in your journal would you stop liking writing in your journal? One or two. Because it's not how they want to express themselves. It's, again, an adult shaped thing. Now, some kids will write a lot and it'll be fabulous, but I just don't think we touch everyone. But if I ask students when they go out anywhere, or today at school in our class, it doesn't have to be going anywhere, be on the lookout for a significant moment. What kind of moment? Then we have to talk about what the word significant means. So take a moment and think, what makes something significant for you? What makes something, how do you know something is significant? How do you know? Yeah.
Well, when it touches you in some way, whether emotionally or some deep part of your brain.
Yeah. So you get a deep reaction, fit emotionally, or a thought, something like that. Anyone else? Yes.
When you're passionate about it.
When you feel this passion. Yes.
When you feel uncomfortable.
If you feel completely out of your element, completely uncomfortable, even a little uncomfortable, that little edgy thing is a good sign that something significant is going on, because it doesn't always feel good. What else might show that something is significant for you? Yes?
When it changes your perspective.
Yeah, you have that aha moment, like, oh my gosh. Anything else? Anybody get goosebumps ever? That's like a signal that something significant happened. Sometimes kids are working with another child, let's say they're doing something with children, and someone says, okay, we're done now, we need to pack up, and they go, oh, the time flew by. That's a signal that something's significant. So we can help kids, yes, please.
So when you overcome a challenge or an obstacle.
Like you went to do this and you did it. So if we help kids become cued in to a significant kind of a moment, and they're on the lookout for that, and they come back, will they be more able and ready to share something, then everybody's going to come back and reflect in their journal. Because you're letting them know, I think something significant is going to happen for you today. I don't know when it's going to happen. I don't know where, but be on the lookout for it, because only you will know. That ties to that idea of intrinsic experience and drawing each person in from where they are. So I like saying those kind of things to help them shape and find those moments in a real and authentic way. So these are just some ideas when reflection matters, and I think that's what we want to look at. The other thing is ways to reflect. How many different ways are there that people could reflect? Let's say if they're on a trip, for example, one day they write in their journal, what else could they do? Think back on the list of all the different ways we reflect. If somebody likes music, how many people here like to listen to music when they're being reflective? And how many teenagers or kids like to listen to music? Lots of them. So rather than say we're going to write in our journal, be on the lookout if a song pops in your head today that relates to something, and tell us what the song is when you come back, or the melody or the words. Or what lyrics from a song relate to what you did today. Let's start there. How many kids would be more responsive to that than just write in your journal? Do you know what I mean? Sometimes I like to tell kids when they're out somewhere, even in their own classroom, if they have access to a camera, take a photograph that says it all. So even in an elementary school class, it could be your responsibility today, in a third grade class, at some point today or this week, you've got the camera near you, it's your job to take a photograph of a significant moment in class that you think we need to pause and think about. What a responsibility. Wouldn't that be fun? Would you like that? Because the purpose of reflection, another purpose, is not for you to lead it, but for who to want to lead it. The students. You already know how to do this. You had ideas in the beginning, you got it. So the whole idea is how do we get them to have that ownership to lead and to be responsive, to be responsible, to be the reflective guide in a classroom. So you can have students, once they've gone through enough of these experiences, like by February, oh, we're in February, they should be ready, if they've had reflection along the way, to say, okay, we're going to divide up this, who's going to be in charge of reflection, then come up with ideas for reflection, run it by me, and we'll see what happens, and see what they assume in that role.